We are the light. We give the sight, and we give the life. And what we are, where we are from, for all the something around us.
Beautiful. Excellent. 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 And you basically you summarized the whole thing in few sentences. Excellent. What else? What else have we learned this weekend, or something that we're taking home with us? Anything else? Yes, yes. Uh, Maria. Yes.
We don't have to have a position on everything.
Yes, excellent. You can have a non-position on some things, few things. Okay. What else? Yes.
Yeah, I really appreciated that we can defend our faith in a logical, reasoning way. Like we can go into the depths of the atheist, like codes and thinking, and challenge it in a similar manner.
Excellent. Excellent. As I said, speak to your child's heart, but do not neglect their mind. And I also say, I said that earlier today, um, the heart cannot love what the mind does not know. So we need to teach our children to know God, because that's our purpose in life, to grow in His knowledge so that we can love Him and share Him with others. You had your hands up, Habib.
Uh, you can be humble while still being bold.
Yes, give me a high five. Yes, that was spot on. Yes, you can be, you ought to be, you should be bold, yet you have to be also humble. Can someone tell me that verse that we kept saying from Ephesians, Ephesians 4:15? Anyone remembers that verse? Speak the what? The truth in love. Speak the truth in love. Do not compromise the truth, and do not sacrifice love on the altar of truth. Speak the truth in love. All right. Let's move on to this topic. What does it mean to be human? Very important. That's why I wanted. We were going back and forth, Murmur, with postmodernism, but we'll get into postmodernism for a second. What does it mean to be human? Let me share with you a quote by Jose Gomez. He's a famous archbishop in Los Angeles. He says the following. You can see it. Okay. The crisis I see today is this. In our society, we no longer seem to share any coherent or common understanding about what it means to be a human being. This problem is rooted in our society's broader loss of the awareness of God. We are living in a society that has no higher purpose than to produce goods to satisfy our personal appetites for pleasure and entertainment. So it seems that our society is morally confused about the most essential question of life. What does it mean to be a human being? Now, why bother? Why discuss this subject? And why get into it? I'll tell you why. Let's look at these cultural hot button topics that we're dealing with: abortion, gender identity, racial equality, social justice, cancel culture, sexual morality, genetic engineering, homosexuality, transgenderism, human trafficking, embryonic research, infanticide, assisted suicide, and the list goes on and on and on. You know, they all deal with one thing: what it means to be human. Think about it. By the way, we can look at each one of these subjects, but this will require a couple of weeks to comprehensively cover all of these subjects from a biblical perspective. But that's not the scope of our discussion. All of these topics, and I'm sure you're dealing with that. If you're not, your children are dealing with these things. This is what our cultures basically, or these topics have dominated our society as we see it today. So, what I would like to share with you, the two prominent worldviews that serve as our cultural source of truth. What are these two worldviews? Naturalism and postmodernism. Naturalism basically is, as I mentioned to you on Friday, I believe, is the worldview of atheists. It's just another fancy way of saying I'm an atheist. You say I'm a naturalist. I believe in nature. Nature is all there is. All that exists can be studied by the sciences, or can be apprehended by the senses rather. That's naturalism. Postmodernism simply says there is no objective truth. You construct your own truth, your own reality. That's postmodernism. There's no meta narrative that is binding on all of us. We all have our own narrative, our own truth, our own reality, and so on. Naturalism, postmodernism. I believe that these two worldviews are, if I may say, are the religions of our society. You're either a naturalist or a postmodernist. And I want to ask four questions rather, and we'll see what naturalism say, or how naturalism responds to each one of these four questions, and likewise what postmodernism say to these four questions. Who we are, our nature. Where did we come from, our origin? What are we worth, our value in this life, axiology? And what is our purpose in life, teleology? Who we are, where we came from, what are we worth, and what is our purpose? Four simple questions. And let's see what naturalism says and what postmodernism says. Okay, we'll make it very simple. And then we'll see what is the Christian worldview. And at the end, I'll finish with, well, what do we do now? Okay, remember what I told you on Friday? I'll give you, here's the problem. I don't mean to be an alarmist, but there's a problem, there's a challenge. Well, what do we do to fix that or to respond to that challenge? So let's see naturalism. What does naturalism say when it comes to our nature, who we are as human beings? What do naturalists say? We are basically machines in motion. Remember what I mentioned to you yesterday? All those naturalists that I quoted, we are molecules in motion. We are moist. Anyone remembers the expression? Robots, exactly. We're moist robots. That's who we are. We're basically highly evolved brains. That's who we are. And these brains are the product of biochemical, basically electrical impulses that take place in our brain. We're just a collection of material and material stuff. We can manipulate ourselves however we want. We're biological organisms, advanced complex mammals. So what happens when you die? You cease to exist. You're basically a machine in motion. All right, let's look at some naturalists / atheists and what they said. Sigmund Freud, I'm sure you all know who that is. He said, humankind is a biological machine, perhaps slightly more complex than other animals, but governed by the same physical needs and drives. Okay? And Bertrand Russell, the famous British mathematician and philosopher, he said, man's origin, growth, hopes, fears, loves, and his beliefs are but the outcome of accidental collocations of atoms. This is that quote that remember Richard Dawkins, famous atheist? Remember when he was asked who we are? What did he say? We are the product of a happy chemical accident. He got that from Bertrand Russell. We're the product of chemical accidents. That's who we are according to naturalism. Where did we come from? Our origin. According to atheists, naturalists, there were two evolutionary events: cosmological evolution and biological evolution. One gave rise to the cosmos, the world, the universe, and the other produced human beings, biological evolution. Well, let's look at George Simpson, one of the most influential paleontologists. Do you know who paleontologists are? Those who study Fossils. Yes, fossils. Or dinosaurs, fossils. Okay? He said, man is the result of a purposeless and natural process that did not have him in mind. So, we are machines, and we came from blind process, or material rather, process of evolution. Well, what is our worth, our value according to naturalism and atheism? Well, you have no intrinsic worth or value. Why? Because you're the product of time plus matter plus chance. What value do you expect to have if your origin is time plus matter plus chance? Remember again what I said yesterday. Where do we get our value from? Our origin. If I am the creation of God who infused in me his value, his worth, then I am worth something. But if I am the product of time plus matter plus chance, what is my worth? What is my value? Here is what Peter Singer, I'm not sure if any of you heard of him, is a very famous TED Talk speaker. He's a professor of bioethics in Princeton University. He goes on TED Talks all the time. He said, human babies are not born self-aware or capable of grasping that they exist over time. They are not persons. Therefore, the life of a newborn is of less value than the life of a pig or a dog or a chimpanzee. And you listen to this on YouTube after he finishes this statement, standing ovation, and everybody's happy and cheering for him that he said such wonderful words. He also promotes killing the handicapped, the elderly, because they have no functionality in our society. Are you surprised? I'm not surprised. Nam? Yeah.
They don't like nobody is making him accountable for what he's saying. Like this is like yes. I mean like if someone is saying something about Christ right now, as you were saying in the last couple of days, many hands is gonna be raised and stop, and this is basically offending. But now we are yani, preaching for killing, and there is no one who would stand and say this is.
Welcome to liberalism. Yeah, absolutely, Abuna. But am I surprised? I'm not surprised. I'm surprised, as Abuna said, yeah, that he can go on and say all these things. But again, he's being consistent with his worldview. Because if we're machines and we can be molded however we want, then yeah, you can say that and get away with it. What is our purpose finally, our teleology, our purpose in life? From a naturalistic, atheistic perspective, well, we have no purpose because particles, molecules, they act in accordance with natural laws with no intent and no purpose in mind. And as I mentioned to you before, I keep repeating myself here. Richard Dawkins, the very famous British atheist and ethologist, he said, in a universe, in his book River Out of Eden, in a universe of blind physical forces and genetic replication, some people are going to get hurt. Other people are going to get lucky. And you will not find any rhyme or reason in it, nor any justice. The universe we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is, at the bottom, no design, no purpose. And then he goes on to say, no evil. Remember what we discussed last night? Okay. So let's wrap up before we get into postmodernism. Naturalism. And by the way, naturalism is very common in the sciences. If you study anything that has to do with science, it's all about naturalism. If you study anything with humanities, philosophies, sociology, psychology, it's postmodernism. You see, that's kind of the general separation. You study science and all of that, the right brain, left brain kind of thing. I'm so glad you're here, Magda, so you can correct me if I'm wrong. And Abuna also correct me if I say anything wrong. So if sciences, atheism, naturalism, humanities, postmodernism. All right. So let's wrap up. According to naturalism and atheism, who are we? Machines in motion. Just to simplify, molecules, highly evolved brains. animals. Okay. Where did we come from? Two evolutionary events, the cosmological evolution and the biological evolution. We're not going to get into details, but that's kind of general sense. What's our worth and our value? No value. Well, because our value is always tied to our origin. Taib, what's our purpose? No purpose. Purposeless life. Okay? Do you remember what we said again? This is like a review over the weekend. I said that I'm not surprised that atheists will say that life has no meaning, because if there's no God, then everything came by chance. And if everything came by chance, then there's no design. If there's no design, there's no purpose. If there's no purpose, there's no meaning in life. Do you see? All right. Let's move to postmodernism, which simply says truth is dead. There's no truth, or no absolute truth, at least. Truth is relative to you, to the circumstances. There is no absolute truth or standard or objective morality or anything of that sort. Who are we according to postmodernism? We are whatever we define ourselves to be. You like to be X today? Great. You like to be Y next week? Great. And I'm leading to something. I think you know where I'm going with that. I'll get to it in a second. Let's see what Walter Anderson, he's a postmodern political activist and scientist. He said, in the postmodern world, the references are below, by the way, if you want the references. In the postmodern world, you just don't get to be a single and consistent somebody. Basically, whatever you feel like it today. Where did we come from? We don't care as postmodernists. Perhaps we evolved, perhaps we didn't. Because postmodernists seek to divorce and separate human nature from any objective historical events. Here's what Jim Leffel said, the professor of philosophy at Trinity Evangelical Divinity School. He said, according to postmodernism, humans are social constructs. Some other expression I'll share with you, postmodernism and constructivism. Basically, our reality is constructed. We come up with our own version of reality. Or socially determined beings. We have no individual personhood because we are the product of culture. We're the product of culture. Well, what is our value? Our value is whatever we ascribe to ourselves or to others. If who we are can be molded by whatever I feel this week or this day, then my value is or coincides with my nature itself. No intrinsic, objective, universal value that is independent of our own feelings and preferences. If we value ourselves highly, then we are highly valuable. Jim Leffel also goes on to say there is no universal human essence, no stable person identity, and consequently, no inherent human value. Well, what is our purpose? According to postmodernism, there is no objective purpose in life. Here is, I'm not going to pronounce his name, but this is a postmodern guru. They call him the Indian God Man. Okay, and this is his title. He said, there is no purpose to life. What a wonderful thing to begin with. Existence itself has no purpose to fulfill. It is not going anywhere. There is no end that it is moving towards. And it's funny because Abuna mentioned in the sermon today that one of the 3 steps for repentance, remember what they are? Admit your responsibility, have hope, and keep what? Moving. He's not moving anywhere. Or he said, don't move anywhere. All right. What are the commonalities between both? As you can see, they both have or share some common perspectives. You'll see that they both deny the existence of God or of a transcendent creator being. Okay? And they both also affirm human autonomy. I am the master of my own life and destiny. And they both also reject any absolute reference to truth, to meaning, to purpose, to value. You know, the dilemma for these two worldviews, or any worldview that rejects God, is that they either make humans nothing or they make humans everything. You see? All right. Let's give you some historical backgrounds. How did we get to this point? A quick history lesson for 2 minutes. Okay. So from the 1st to the 17th, 18th century, we had a period, and this is generally speaking, of course, there were some exceptions along the way. Generally speaking, we lived in an era that was predominantly marked by pre-modernism or pre-modern era. People were theists. Theism was the common worldview. Theists, people believed in God. God exists, and people believed in him. Truth came from God by what? Faith. By faith, I get the truth from God. And what was the vehicle to give me this truth from God by faith? Religious organizations. That's kind of the common worldview, if you call it worldview, between the 1st to the 18th century. Now, what happened from the 18th, middle of the 18th to the 20th century? We no longer live in a pre-modern world. Modernism came in. Okay, اللي هو اسمه عصر الحداثة، ما قبل الحداثة والحداثة. Okay, atheism became very prevalent. Prevalent? Is that the word? Common? Okay, predominant. Thank you. Yeah. Atheism. God no longer exists. Truth no longer comes from God by faith. Truth comes from science by reason. What led to this shift? What do you think happened? 3 major events happened in history that led to this movement or shift from theism to atheism, from pre-modernism to modernism. What happened in Western Europe? True. That actually also led to Martin Luther and his Protestant Reformation. But there were some cultural movements. Who said the Industrial Revolution? Yes, thank you, Ivram. Yes, the Industrial Revolution is one of them. The Renaissance, the Enlightenment period in Europe. All of these led to this shift. You know what these 3 movements made men and women believe? I can now replace God. The Industrial Revolution, the Enlightenment, the Renaissance. I now have achieved this. I've accomplished all of this. I don't need God anymore. I can do it on my own. Again, back to Star Wars. No one can save us. We can save ourselves. That's the modern era. Then from the 20th century to our current time, current era, it goes from pre-modernism to modernism to postmodernism. عصر ما بعد الحداثة. Postmodernism. Truth no longer comes from God. As a matter before truth, we now have 3 different gods. It is no longer theism, no longer atheism. It's now what? 3 man-made gods. Remember I mentioned them to you. Humanism, materialism, hedonism. Me, my money, and my body. These are the 3 gods of this age. So if you deny the one true God, you make up for yourself one of those 3, if not all 3. And I linked those 3 to the temptation on the Mount a couple of weeks ago. And I also tell you that those 3 gods, we say those 3 gods, or the deacon says those 3 gods every time at the end of the Catholic epistle. What does the deacon say? Do not love the world nor the things that are in the world. What are the things in the world? Do you remember what St. John said? The pride of life, the lust of the eyes, and the lust of the flesh. Those are the 3 gods. And I'll tell you something else. If you ever think or thought of becoming a monk or a nun, there are 3 vows of monasticism. Do you know what they are? No? Huh? So to own nothing, poverty, obedience, الطاعة, obedience, والعفة اللي هي الطهارة اللي هي chastity. Okay? If you think of those three, they're not just coincidence. It's to protect against those three gods. Think about it. Obedience, to humble yourself. I am not God. He is. That protects against humanism. Chastity, purity, to protect against hedonism. Poverty, to protect against materialism. Can I tell you something else? What season of the church we're in now? Lent. What are the three exercises the church teach us to do? The three sods: fasting, praying, and almsgiving. That's not coincidence. It's to protect against those three gods. When you pray, you know you're not God. You succumb and obey God. Obey God. Protects against humanism. Fasting protects against hedonism. Almsgiving, materialism. You see? And you can go on and on and on and on. And every spiritual exercise, you'll see that those are the only three gods that men and women fabricate for themselves once they deny the one true God. This is the era of postmodernism. Truth no longer comes from God by faith. Truth no longer comes from science by reason. Truth now comes from me by what? Feelings. My feelings. What do I feel like today? I feel like I'm a man or a woman trapped in a man's body. Then I must be so, because that's my feeling. Can you deny my feeling? I need to live. I need to be authentic to my feelings, and so on and so forth. People that I forgot to mention, those who were the prominent figures of the modern era: Immanuel Kant, Karl Marx, Marxism and communism, Sigmund Freud, psychoanalysis world he lived in, Friedrich Nietzsche, Charles Darwin. These are the modern atheistic proponents. In the postmodern era, any of you heard of Deepak Chopra? You've heard of him, okay? He's again another god of our new age, postmodernism. Oprah, I'm sure you've heard of her, and they're friends, by the way, Oprah and Deepak. Eckhart Tolle, Paulo Coelho. You know, Abuna. There's the Alchemist. There's the Alchemist, and actually he's writing other things that youth come and tell me, I found this great author, and they, anyways. Yes, you're absolutely right. Don't buy his books. Save your money. You read The Alchemist? Yeah. Anyways, so listen to what, again, what I like to do always is to tie everything back to what? Scriptures. Remember, this is our what? Source of truth. Would you like to know what the scripture says about each one of these eras? Let's see. The first era, that's easy. We know this verse. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. People generally believed in the Creator and were theists, and they believed in God, faith, and so on. Can someone tell me a verse that describes the second era? آية مشهورة برضو. قال الجاهل في قلبي ليس إله في قلبه. The fool said in his heart, there is no God. Well, why did David say the fool? Because you must be, because the fingerprints of God is all over this universe around you. You have to be really blind. Remember that picture I showed you? Atheists don't believe in God because because they're not looking for God. Now listen to this verse that describes this third era that we live in. Listen carefully to St. Paul's verse to his disciple Timothy, 2 Timothy. In the last days, listen carefully, men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, lovers of pleasure, rather than lovers of God. I couldn't find a better verse that describes this era. Lovers of themselves, what is that? That's humanism. Man is the measure of all things. That's the slogan of humanistic manifesto. Manifesto 1, Manifesto 2. That's humanism. Lovers of money. Well, that's materialism. Lovers of pleasure, that's hedonism. And what did he say? In the last days. And I'm not here to depress you and say, oh, God, Jesus is coming tomorrow. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just telling you that the world we live in is needs us as Christians to be better equipped to respond to it. That's all. And I want to end with, because I don't want to end with a pessimistic note. I'm not ending yet, but I want to say this right now. As long as we have Christ, we have hope. I want you to always remember this. As long as we have Christ, we have what? Hope. And he who is with us is more powerful than those who are against us. So don't think, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? I don't know what's going to happen to my children's children, my grandchildren. The world is getting, so and so. Don't leave with this attitude, because as long as you are with Christ and you have Christ, you'll have hope. And with that hope, you can conquer the world and show the world who Christ is. All right, let's move on and share with you the impact of postmodernism and naturalism on our culture. I'll share with you just a couple of things I picked up. Become your authentic self. Any of you heard of that expression before? I hear it on a daily basis. What does it mean, become your authentic self? How do you feel? Because follow your hearts. That's Oprah's slogan, by the way. I don't think you watch Oprah, but if you do, that's her slogan. Follow your heart. If your heart tells you, and she says, your heart is king. If you feel this way, act upon it. Someone in the 1970s said, if it feels good, then do it. His name was Hugh Hefner. Don't ask me who that is. Also, you do you, and I do me. You do you, and I do. You've heard that expression before? Actually, celebrities now and professional athletes on social media, that's their handle. What do you call it? Is that I do me, whatever that is. I do me, you do you. Okay? Now, if you're a Christian, do you, and I do me? We both do Christ. In other words, we follow him as king of our lives. Life is short. Dare to live your truth. Not the truth. Your truth, because you can make up your own truth, just as you make up your own profile on social media. I am my own God, and so on and so on. Let me share with you some news that I was able to collect. Again, this is the product. Remember what I told you again, ideas have consequences. So this ideology must be manifest in some consequences, for the lack of a better word. Then let me share with you those consequences. Lifenews.com. A woman has an abortion. Why? Because she couldn't fit into her wedding dress. CNN Health. First child dies by euthanasia in Belgium. Parents.com. Transgender man gives birth to healthy baby, talks now navigating pregnancy as a man. Mirror. Transgender man gives birth to a non-binary partner's baby with female sperm donor. Now, I had to read this 5 times to know what that really means. Yeah. First ever baby born using 3-parent genetic engineering technique. And don't Google what that is. Anyways, and the list goes on and on and on. Now, listen, and I don't, in all seriousness, are you all surprised? I am not surprised at all, because ideologies must be revealed or manifest in our cultural happenings or behavior or conduct. I'm not surprised. This is the outcome of what we know to be true. Now, let's get into the Christian worldview. So we've touched on naturalism/atheism and postmodernism /constructivism. Now, what is the Christian worldview? We all know, where did we come from, or who are we? Well, we know who we are. We are the what? Created in God's image. We bear his image. And why is it important for us to know that we are created in his image? Why is it important for us to know our identity? simply because who we are determines what we're capable of doing. Now, let me tell you the difference between Christianity and existentialism or secularism اللي هو المذهب الوجودية أو مذهب الطبيعة. Okay? Existentialism, which simply says existence precedes essence. Here's what existentialism says in our secular world. What you do defines who you are. That's why when you meet someone for the first time and you say, hey, so what do you do? Oh, you're an engineer. You become an engineer. You are an engineer. You are a doctor, an accountant, a lawyer. You are such because what you do defines who you are. Can't separate the two. I remember when I was watching, I'm a football fan, so I watch football, and and my team is the 49ers, and I know one of the very famous receivers, Jerry Rice. You know, when he retired, all his life was football, football, football. When he retired, they asked him, "So what are you going to do now?" He says, "I don't know who I am anymore." And he went on to say, "Well, because I am a football player. That's my identity. Now that I'm no longer playing football, I don't know who I am anymore." You see, what you do defines who you are. That's existentialism. That's what the world says. Christianity, on the other hand, says who you are determines what you're capable of doing. Do you see? Who are you? First, your essence precedes your existence rather than existence preceding essence. Who are you? I am created in the image of God. Now I know what I can do. That is to reflect that image unto others. Do you see? So who am I? That's important for us to know. Where did we come from? Well, we know where we came from. We're created by God. We're not here as a happy, what, chemical accident. We're here created by God. I asked some youth last week or so, I said, let me just speak to your heart for a second and pause your mind. Let me just ask you this question. This is not an argument for God, but this helps you think. Would you rather be, tell me which one would you rather be? Blindly evolved or deliberately created? Which one of these will give you fulfillment, satisfaction, and meaning in life? To know that you're blindly evolved, you've blindly been evolved, or that you've been deliberately created, especially when your creator is someone who loves you into creation, who willed for you to be created out of his love. So where did we come from? We know where we came from. What is our value as a Christian? We should know that. St. Paul said, we were bought, exactly, who said it? Yes, at a price, with a price. 1 Corinthians 6:20. You were bought. What is that price? A pretty hefty price. The blood of Jesus Christ. Do you think we are worth anything? You better believe we are. We're worth his blood. Our value, it's important for us to know. Whenever you feel down, you have this low self-worth, low self-esteem, you can go visit Magda to get some therapy. But then you can also do something else. You can read Ephesians chapter 1. Remember that. What does Ephesians chapter 1 tell you? You are chosen, you are redeemed, you're sealed, you are getting an inheritance, you are the temple of God, and you will list 15 attributes about who you are. Ephesians chapter 1. All right, number 4. What is our purpose? What is it, Jonathan? No, you tell me. Perfect. That's our purpose, to know him who created us and to make him known unto others. So we know what are these 4 questions. 4 answers to these 4 questions. So I then conclude by saying the following. Listen carefully. I firmly believe that both of these worldviews, naturalism and postmodernism, can offer no meaningful basis for human values, human rights, and human dignity. Only in Christianity will you find a firm basis for human value, human rights, human dignity. And I challenged so many atheists, those who advocate for human rights, tell me, on what basis are you advocating for human rights. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm not saying we shouldn't. But give me a justification based on your atheism for you to advocate and fight for human rights. You will find none. And I challenge any atheist will tell me, I am fighting for human rights because fill in the blank. Because it feels good. That's for you, not for me. Objectively, you cannot advocate for human rights unless you believe in a God-given rights. Even in our Constitution, what do we have in the Declaration of Independence? We have what? What's the expression? Unalienable rights. مش كده? No? We have those rights. Where'd they come from? Endowed by our Creator. That's the Declaration of Independence of our country. Anyways, so let me skip this and skip this and skip Matt Walsh as well. He speaks about the same thing. What do we do? This will take very little time. But before we get into now what, I would like to ask you, what do we do? Just raise our white flag and say, okay, I quit. What do we do? I would like to hear from you. Solution to the problem. Be bold. Yes, that's good. What else? Be specific. Yes, Habibi. Hold on. We all want to hear you. Hold on. But make it good. We all?
Y'all want to show what God wanted us to do?
Huh?
Y'all want to show what God wanted us to do?
We all want to, we want to show God what He wants us to do? Okay, yes. Well, what does He want us to do? You're right. Good point. What does He want us to do? Give me some practical. What do we do? نعمل إيه? Absolutely. Stay firm in what we believe to be the truth or to be true. Yes. What else? Be prepared. Always be equipped. How do you win any war? And we are in a cultural war. Is to know your enemy and to know your own weapons. Okay. Number one, I got four suggestions here for you. To be anchored in biblical truth. And this is good for us as parents, as Sunday school servants, to do for our children. Be anchored in biblical truth. What do I mean by that? We need to teach our children what it means to be created in God's image. We are not the product of blind process, time plus chance plus matter plus all of that. We are created in God's image. What does it mean to be created in God's image? Number two, what does it mean to live in a fallen world? The world we live in is a fallen world. We expect darkness because we are called to be the light unto the world. Light is meaningless unless there is darkness. It shines in or through. Number three, what is my body? Is it, what's a silsal بالإنجليزي? Play-Doh. Is it a Play-Doh that you can mold however you want? I want to make it this. I want to make it that. I want to basically change whatever I want to change my features because my body is mine. I can do whatever I want to do with it. No, it's not. When was this transfer of ownership? When did it take place? You know the transfer of ownership, like when you buy a new car and you transfer ownership? When did that happen? Right after, exactly, in baptism. And right after baptism, what happened? Abuna biyamil, the 36 chrismation. What does that chrismation do? Transfer of ownership. You now belong to Jesus Christ. Your members are His members. Number four, who am I as an individual? These are biblical truths we need to ground our children in. Number two, we need to help them and us understand the source of morality. Masdar al-akhlaq, right and wrong are not determined by how I feel. Very important to be able to disassociate or distinguish between how you feel and what you know to be true. I'll tell you, I had conversations with my dad way back then. As you know, my dad was a priest, and he's in heaven now, and he tells me, don't always follow what your heart tells you to do. Now, if he said these words nowadays, he would be an outcast, because we need to follow our hearts. He said, sometimes I didn't feel like going to church to pray. He's a priest, he's a hegemon. He said, sometimes I didn't feel like getting up to pray. But do you succumb to your feelings? Then you'll have 500 people not praying, after you. So what do? You do what you know is the right thing to do. And what happens? Your feeling will eventually will follow. Okay? So right and wrong are not determined by how you feel. I need to teach my children discernment, to discern. How do you discern truth from falsehood? You know how? I'll give you the analogy of a bank teller. If you have ever worked as a bank teller, they teach you how to detect good, authentic money from counterfeit money. How do they teach you to discern the difference between the two? No, not just look at it and see that line no, none of that. You know what they do? They give you hours of training to actually have to practice the feel of authentic, good money. Hours of training. Because when you get that feel of, okay, this is what the authentic banknote feels like, you'll be able to detect the counterfeit banknote. So the more you anchor yourself in the truth, the more you'll be able to detect falsehood. The misery of sin and the joy of righteousness. Number 3, we need to teach our children our purpose in life. What is our mission in this world? Is to live conveniently, with comfort, with basically have no pain, no suffering, and enjoy my life and do whatever I want to do. What am I to this world, and what is this world to me? And number 4, as I always say, speak the truth in love, be bold, and stand firm, as Abuna said, in what you know to be true. And we learn from these people. And 5thly, and most importantly, to pray, because these are not our children. They are his children. We're only stewards on them. Whenever my wife gets a little worried, and I say, listen, Daniel and Jonathan, my kids, are not mine. They're not yours. They are God's first and foremost. We're only stewards on both of them. So don't worry. They are in his hands. So we all to pray and seek guidance and so on. All right. I'm done. I would like to see if you have any comments or questions or thoughts about what we have said. Fadi Habibi. Push back.
Just on one question where you ask people, would you rather be, accidentally bomb evolved, or purposely, deliberately created and designed? You're asking them how they feel.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not about how you feel. It's about the absolute truth. Right.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. And that's why I prefaced by saying, I'm not going to speak to your mind, because this question was after an hour-long lecture telling them the evidence for a creator. So I have saturated their mind with knowledge of the evidence of the truth. Now I'm just shifting to the heart. That's why I said, let me just, and that's not an argument for God's existence either. It's just something that will make you think, so that you can take how you feel and align that with the hour-long lecture of the truth. But good point. Good point. Now, if I began with that and left it at that, it's gone. Yeah. Yes, Ivram. Hold on. So, okay. Professor that you met, the professor that you met, that you told him take 2 weeks and pray for the God that you don't know through it. He actually said, they didn't want me, right? So it ties rational. Exactly. The heart and the mind. The mind and the heart. Yes.
There's just one thing that I'm often confused about. So we say when people believe in the history, right? When people believe in God, and then once they had the Industrial Revolution, they started saying no, it's science. But I think they also it's the same, I feel like in the Bible, like when Jesus was like I don't know the name in English, but when they come and tell him, how can you talk to this man? He's a sinner, or how can your apostles not wash their hands, or how to do, and Jesus didn't like that. Like, and he was like, I feel like sometimes now when we say, okay, we are true to our Christian beliefs, I feel it resembles that in a way. Like, I feel like what you said, that some Christians are then say, or like Christians are being said that they are intolerant or homophobic or these things. Honestly, I do see it. Like, it often comes as a package, which is very confusing. Like, I like to be a tolerant person. I like to advocate for people to get justice and get fair chance, not have like this big separation of those have all the money, those have no money, and all of this. But if you believe in this, then usually you're the one who's like, okay, pro-abortion, pro this, and if you're not, and I don't want to belong to this, but I don't want to belong to this either.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why I said it takes wisdom. That's a good point. It takes wisdom to be able to live as a Christian, holding on to your convictions as a Christian in this world. And we had this conversation, I think, last night. Wisdom is important in this case, to be able to when to be bold, what to say, how to say it, because you don't want to also be bold, as I said, or be truthful at the expense of being humble, being loving, being meek, and so on. So you pray for wisdom so that God may give you that balance between these two things. Yes, Meg. Okay. Hmm. Yeah, and it is a challenge. My wife tells me this. She's in the medical field, and she has patients coming into her, asking for problems and advice, asking for advice rather for their problems, and she just almost want to say, "Well, have you tried to read the, the scriptures? Some spiritual book. Have you tried to do this?" It's a challenge, and you can't do that. Of course, you'll get fired. So it is a challenge, but I'll tell you something. That's why I said ask for wisdom. There is a way to do it. I'll tell you a real story. So I have a colleague of mine when I used to work in the office. He came to me, he's Asian, and he came to me and he said, I'm not sure if I told you that story. Did I tell you that story? Okay. He said, I am exploring Christianity and I would like to know more about your faith. Now I can't talk to him in the office because that's against my code of conduct. I work at Kaiser Permanente, and I'll get fired immediately. So I said, great, let's go out to lunch. So I take him out to lunch. I prayed first and I said, God, help me reflect your truth. This guy is seeking the truth. So I take him out to lunch. We took him out to lunch for 3 or 4 months every single Wednesday. Talk to him about Jesus Christ and so on. I give him the Gospel of John, follow up with him and so on. There is a way. And I say, I love what Isaiah said. Here I am, Lord, use me and send me. If you genuinely pray this prayer and say this prayer, God will present you with opportunities to reflect his light without compromising your job, your career. And I also said, if needs be, and if someone asks me at work, and I hope I have the strength to do so, to denounce my faith, this is when I say, no, hold on. Now you've crossed the line. You'll get fired. I'll get fired. I don't care, but God has got something else for me. So wisdom. And I shared the example with you that when I had the crucifix next to my computer monitor in the office, and someone was very troubled by that little crucifix. He said, it troubles me when every time I pass by, just looking at it. I said, Daragati, and he said, I don't want to see it. That's fine. I just moved it back a little bit. I could say, no, it's going to be here. I challenge you. This is my Jesus. That's not wise either. So I think it's important to ask and seek God's wisdom, number one. Number two, say, "Here I am, Lord. Use me however you want." He will give you opportunities. I guarantee you, if you want to be used as an instrument in his hand, he will use you without compromising your career or your job. That's all I could tell you. اتفضل يا بونا.
Is basically sometimes we think about how the people feel. So the problem here is not even how I deliver the truth to the people by loving, being humble, or in a good way. But there will always be the idea or the concept that the darkness will be offended by the light. I mean, like sometimes we look into by saying the truth, this is gonna hurt people, but the darkness will always be hurt by the light. I mean, like the way that we think sometimes about the truth is not from our perspective, and that's the challenge. I think that's what Marianne and what Magda are always trying to tell in the question that even if we are saying it lovingly, humbly, the the truth will always be offending to the people and to the dark, to the extent that at any circumstances you will feel like you hurt them. Although you don't mean to, you are trying to be loving, you're trying to be humble, you're trying to be in the best way ever you can deliver the truth to them. But there is always be offended. Every single person that you're trying to tell him the truth or bring the light into the darkness is gonna be offended. And I think I'm not.
Go ahead, go ahead.
No, I mean, like, how can we don't feel? I don't want to say the word the guilt. Like, how can we say we are delivering the truth in the right way? And I yeah, maybe the person in front of me that's not gonna be at ease on his ears, but I don't care. Like, how can I get to that level?
Wisdom. To God given wisdom. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I want to go ahead. That's why I would say, ask for wisdom to say the right thing at the right time. Because I could be bold and I could do more damage than good. Yani bold without wisdom, without compassion and love, I would turn people away. So there's that balance that we need to strike. Sorry, I don't mean to take the microphone from you. Um, so yeah, and I always say Christ did not come to tell people what they want to hear. He came to tell people what they need to hear. That's why they were offended and they wanted to persecute him. Because you're right, the light and was it Aristotle, I think, who said that it's expected for children to be afraid of the dark, but the tragedy is when adults are afraid of the light. You see, and that's what happens. We don't want to see the light. And the example that we mentioned about the professor, he did not want to see the light. He didn't want to be offended. So, yes, Ahmed. Of course, of course. Right. Yep. Exactly. Let me be practical with you. Wisdom. When I say ask for wisdom, you know what? It's three things. What is it you say? The content of what you say. How to say it, most importantly, the approach, and when to say it. That's it. So ask God for those three things. God, grant me what I should say. Grant me also how I should say it with love and meekness and compassion and so on. And grant me the time. This is what I mean by seize the moment. The time that I would use that would be most impactful. So besides that, that's good. Good. I'm glad you raised this question because it is a challenge, and I'm glad you raised this point. Yes.
Question about something that was said in the liturgy in the I believe it was I believe it was the Pauline epistle and it was about I believe St. Paul said that we're so lucky that we're privileged that we are chosen for salvation. And I was just wondering why other people weren't chosen for the same salvation.
Maria, I love the fact that you were listening intently and attentively to the Pauline epistle. I commend you for that. I wish I was listening as intently as you were. So Yani, God bless you, first of all. Second of all, yes, I remember this verse. We were chosen by God, and you know what else he said? We were sanctified by the Spirit. Okay, so we're chosen by God, sanctified by the Spirit. Now, your question is, why are we chosen by God? Do you think that God said, I'm going to choose Maria, but I'm not going to choose her friends? Is this what St. Paul meant by chosen by God? No. What do you think he meant by chosen by God? Or what do you think St. Paul meant? No, then God would be unfair. If he touches your heart differently, then that's unfair. What about the other ones? Zambuhum eh? What do you think? What do you all think? I want to hear from you. Yes, Randa. Exactly. And when did he know that? Exactly. Yes. If you say we're chosen, that means we have no will, we have nothing to do with it. I am chosen by God. I can Do you need to pray? Why pray? My God chose you, khalas. Do you need to fast? You see, we don't believe that God عنده an favoritism, okay? But he knew. St. Paul explains it in Romans chapter 8. If you read Romans chapter 8, you're going to read it, right? He will explain that before the creation of the world, he knew who will respond and who will not. That's what he means by that. Okay? But who will, okay, let me rephrase. He knew before the creation of the world who will freely respond and who will freely reject. فهمتي قصدي? Okay. Good question. Yes, Randa. Mm-hmm. Excellent. Now, my question to them, and yes, you're absolutely right. I get the same thing from atheists. My question is simple. Why is that good? Simple. I want to I want to have my grandchildren do, but why does it matter? Because you're going to cease to exist. You're not going to even know who your grandchildren are. Please, please.
Maybe, maybe, maybe because I just want them to live. If they're gonna enjoy like 70 years of life, then they enjoy this with no pain, with no problem. So it's for the sake of the existence of the human beings, not for something. I'm not working for something eternal. So I'm working for the good of the moment, or for the good of the present of the existence of the others
Right.
later in the future.
Excellent. But to you, there's no future. To you, they don't exist because you don't exist. I mean, think with me. When you die, you're done. So you're not gonna yani, it doesn't make sense, logically speaking. It doesn't make sense that I want my grandkids to have a good life. Good life, amen. You will not even know if they are alive or dead because you don't even you're not there. حلو قوي بقى. That's what I'm looking for. Give me a moral value, selfless. Why is selflessness a good thing? To me, okay. Um, again, Nietzsche, who was the mentor of Hitler. Hitler thought it was a wonderful thing to kill all the Jews and to kill all the subhuman people. He thought it was a good thing. Nobody could argue with that. Could anyone say Hitler, this is bad? I'll tell you this. I've had this conversation with atheists, many of them, and I say this question. I'll make it more dramatic. Do you think killing innocent people for fun a good thing or a bad thing? They will never say this is bad. or at least the intellectual atheists. Where'd you get bad from? Hitler thought it was good, and many others through the history thought it was good to kill millions of people. Why do you think it's bad? Well, you don't know if you don't know anything bad unless you know what good is. Where did good come from? So you cannot infuse a moral value in an immoral or amoral world. They live in an amoral world without morality. You cannot say this is good, or once you say good or bad, you're done, philosophically speaking. Magda?
So we went over naturalist and postmodernism, thinking again, day to day, I believe we live in a world where it's somewhere in between. We're not working with, these educational atheists where it's far more nuanced. Many of these people that don't share our faith and our values have their own set of values that are good, honest, right, caring, thoughtful, loving, yet they don't share our faith. So, you regularly come back to wisdom, but it's finding ourselves in these discussions, like Brenda said, with people that share a lot of our same values too. And it's, I believe, far more difficult to discern for an adult, never mind a child, um, in identifying and navigating, right? Are Christians or these people, because many are really good and have values. So I guess my question is, what would you call that, I guess, middle ground between the two?
Yeah.
And if I'm wrong as well, that is, I feel like the population, the culture that we're mostly surrounded by.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. Yeah, we had this conversation with Abuna that I have atheist friends that would put me to shame with their moral behavior, and they're just awesome, wonderful people. But I say this is despite their atheism, not because of their atheism. You see, it's not a byproduct. It's not a natural yani, working of their atheistic worldview. It's despite their atheism. And I tell you that you could have sunshine without shadows, but you can never have shadows without sunshine. So you could have moral behavior and you don't know what the origin is, and you cannot ground it because there's got to be a moral lawgiver that gives you this moral conduct and behavior, or to ground it in him. But that's not because you don't believe in God. That's despite your belief in God. Because I see moral objective values, there's got to be someone who imprinted these values upon our hearts. So we lead them to this question: where do morals come from? I love the fact that you don't do this or do that. But why do you do that? And I mean, you don't have to ask like that, but ask for wisdom to ask this question. And I ask atheists, why? Where'd you get that from? And there are four possible sources for morality. Just to tell you very briefly, I'm not going to get into the details. Number one, morality comes from evolution. And that's many of them will say that's called evolutionary ethics. Morality comes from culture and society. That's social ethics. Society says what's good and what's bad. Well, if that's the case, then we should applaud ISIS and the Taliban and the Nazi Germany and all that. Number three, society comes from me. That's Kantian ethics, Immanuel Kant, who said, I make the rules. Well, that doesn't make sense, because if I make the rules, I can dismiss the rules when it conflicts with my personal interest. Or society comes from a morally perfect being. And then you can see that they cannot justify their moral behavior or ground it in someone. Knowing it is one thing, where it comes from is another thing. And that's two different fields in philosophy: epistemology, what we know to be true, and ontology, the essence and where it came from. Yes, Ibram. Yes. Right. 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 Exactly. Hmm. You're absolutely right. We are founded on Judeo-Christian moral principles, and we're trying to revert that now. But yes, you're absolutely right. Yes, Marianne. طب عشان خاطر الوقت ممكن نخلي ده آخر سؤال؟
I think like if we always say, why do you have purpose? Why do you do things if you believe we're just matter? But how about the counter argument? Like, why do we care about this life if we all we're working for is heaven or the afterlife? Like, why do we have a nice life? Why do we work hard? Why do we want to build a career? Why do we want to have a nice car? Why do we care? Why we're not guilty about it?
Yeah. Well, good question. I love your questions. We shouldn't be, because God doesn't want us to be miserable in this world either. God wants us to be successful. He just don't want us to be attached to this world. And as a matter of fact, he wants us to live in that next world, in this world. So this world will be, or the next world, heaven will be an extension of our life here on earth. So we don't, as Christians, we don't make that clear cut separation. Islam does, not in Christianity. Remember what I told you last night? I can be in heaven while I am on earth. If I am, nisitu. فاكرين, what is heaven? Christ. What makes heaven heaven is Christ. So if I can be in Christ on earth, I am in heaven on earth. So we can experience heaven on earth. And there's nothing that is yani, that contradicts the teachings of the Lord of being successful, having a nice job, a nice career, buying a big house, buying a nice car. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as your heart is not, or you're not dependent. And the first Sunday of Lent will tell us this nice lesson. We're not dependent on our riches, but God will shower you with blessings on earth and in heaven. Seek first the kingdom of God, and everything else shall be added unto you. So there's nothing wrong with that. I can argue and say God doesn't want us to be miserable. He wants us to be happy, but happy with Him, not happy with my money. All right. Thank you so very much. I can't thank you enough for the wonderful, edifying time that I had with you. And I mean this genuinely, genuinely, genuinely. I enjoyed my time with you Friday, yesterday, and the gathering at people's houses, and today, and I really had a wonderful. Thank you, Abuna, for your hospitality and your love, and thank you to all of you for all the love that you gave me. So I hope I can see you again. Maybe God willing, we can plan something for next year. And in the meantime, I ask you to pray for me, and keep me in your prayers. Hope to see you soon. Thank you again, and God bless you. Thank you so much.
We can't be more thankful, يعني. There's nothing that we could say that would give him the we are very grateful and thankful for the time. I know he was very busy, but he made it, يعني. So we're waiting on the next time. We're praying for his safe travel back to his family and to his church and service. And God bless you for all of us. Let's stand up for prayer, and we can say bye to George right after. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, oh God, and we thank you, Lord, for bringing us together. We thank you for this blessed gathering. We thank you for sending us, George, for your words. Confirm us in your faith. Fill our hearts with your Spirit. Fill your hearts with peace, love, and joy. Through the intercessions of our Holy Theotokos, Saint Mary, through the intercessions of our great martyrs, Saint Mina and Saint Pope Carlos, and all the saints who have pleased you since the beginning, hear us, we pray, thankfully, saying, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come.